is just fantastic.
This video is long overdue, but we had to wait because we had to wait for a sentence. We knew Ruby Franke and something Hildebrandt, because I've forgotten her name while talking, were doomed. They were done, dusted, toasted. We were just waiting to find out how toasted they were going to be. In 2023, I made a number of videos talking about Ruby Franke. We are going to have to use those to provide you with ample and adequate context as to who they are, because this is, yes, the halls of injustice. Because today we welcome inmates numbers 191.1 and 191.2 to the ISO cubes. Their names, as you know, are Ruby Franke and something Hildebrandt, both of whom are going to be here for what will feel like an eternity. But there is a maximum because of state law, so the sentence isn't quite what it seems. Because you need context as to who these individuals are, I am going to have to draw on the past to tell you who they are, and then draw on the past again to tell you about the crimes they committed. So just who are inmate numbers 191.1 and 191.2, Ruby Franke and something Hildebrandt? Now there are multiple players in this story. I'm going to name all of them now. Ruby Franke, Jodi Hildebrandt, Kevin Franke, Shari Franke, Bonnie Holelelele, the sister of Ruby, alright? I'm not even going to pretend I care enough to pronounce their names correctly. Ruby Franke was a family vlogger of a YouTube channel 8 Passengers. The channel itself no longer exists, and she ran it alongside her husband Kevin before speculation inevitably brought to light that the couple may have been mistreating their 6 children. The Mormon couple had about 2.5 million subs at its peak before it was removed from the platform. Their eldest daughter, Shari, has been somewhat vocal on social media about contact with her family back in 2022. This is where the rumours and theories began to crop up and led to their downfall. So who Ruby Franke is some skank from Utah who ran a big channel, raking in millions of views and followers, but she garnered, while her channel was active, criticism for her parenting choices. The pushback intensified when Ruby co-founded parenting advice and support program Connections, with an X in it, because that makes it sleek and unique and special and modern. Hi Twitter. Connections had been called a cult by many online. The parenting style itself promoted by the pair, including her husband, was considered extreme and harsh. The frequent inclusion of what has been called homophobic, racist and transphobic comments did not help their popularity. In one referenced example, Ruby Franke told her viewers that children do not deserve and should not receive unconditional love. The channel itself of 8 Passengers did feature on a regular basis all 6 of their children, Shari, Chad, Abby, Julie, Russell and Eve. That was derived from the very first video I had done on the subject of Ruby Franke. What I want to do now is talk about some of the allegations that were against her, but also about connections, because the motivations for why one commits the crimes they commit are tied in quite extensively to Connections and her association, a very close association at that, with Jodi Hildebrandt or something Hildebrandt, because I'd forgotten her name up until now. I should insert a disclaimer. These are not in the correct order, I know. Please don't be that person that has to tell me somehow the picture is different. When you're a crap parent, it doesn't matter what order the crimes are committed in, you're a crap parent, and you deserve to burn for all the crappy things you did to your children. And of course, in this segment, we will talk a bit more about Jodi Hildebrandt so you can understand her influence over Ruby Franke. That does not at any point negate or downplay or act as a mitigating factor for the nature of the crimes committed by both. Children are our future. Your role as a mother or as a parent is tied with unconditional love to your child. Once you remove that aspect, you are trying to remove your ability to be responsible, so that they, the children, have to simply obey your rule, something which I cannot accept, because I firmly believe, understanding, education are vitally important. The allegations that came to light as far back as 2020 raised concerns among the fanbase itself. The family was at the centre of a child abuse scandal and a CPS investigation of a deleted video where their 15-year-old son had revealed he had been forced to sleep on the floor in the family room for 7 months because he pulled a prank on his younger brother. I can understand grounding a child when they do something that might be a bit amiss, but removing the child's ability to use a bedroom, eroding at their dignity over a prank, is a bit much. When that came to light, the family actually quit vlogging, and the YouTube channel was deleted entirely. In another incident, a neighbour had noticed duct tape wrapped around one of the children's wrists and ankles. This led to the police being called. After the Channel 8 passengers' deletion and Ruby Franke going balls deep in connections, she would on a semi-regular basis leave the family home with her husband for weeks at a time. This would sometimes lead to children going to homes of neighbours to ask for food and water. This fracturing within the family led to the older children, when they went to college, refusing to speak to their family because of the downward spiral that they had noticed in their parents, more notably within Ruby. Hi, Future Meg here. There was another incident that I forgot to mention in this part. Ruby Franke had refused to bring to school food for her 6-year-old daughter, who had forgotten to pack her own lunch. At the age of 6, I place the onus of preparing one's lunch on the parent. It is not too much on you, the mother or father, to prepare such a meal. If you believe you have something vastly more important to do, chances are you are too full of yourselves. Pack your child's lunch, or teach them so that when they are old enough, maybe early teens, when they don't want to eat lunch, they can do it for themselves. Until then, be a bloody parent. The short answer to this question is yes, and we're going to use the changes in Ruby Franke because of Jodi Hildebrandt as an apt way of demonstrating how this can be regarded as a bit of a cult. Connections is a parenting and business counselling service. Ruby Franke was a member of the business team division. The mission statement for Connections is we invite and encourage healing and facilitate personal growth through impeccable honesty, rigorous personal responsibility, and vulnerable humility. For $75 a week, the company provides 90-minute group sessions moderated by Jodi Hildebrandt to empower each other to heal and change. They also offer counseling for businesses with an 18-week program on company leadership that costs $14,985. It wasn't just the detractors of 8 passengers, though, that found that Connections came across as cult-like. The fanbase, the dwindling fanbase, did as well. According to one feature, the concern only grew when Kevin and Ruby filmed a video for Connections in which they admitted to pulling their 10-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter out of school to make them clean floors all day, and to give them no Christmas presents as punishment because Ruby alleged they were acting selfish. I'd like to know if it was this Connections program that taught her that loving your child is conditional, and taking away their dignity would yield a positive outcome, instead of what it actually does, and that is control them until they're old enough to leave, where they never come back. Connections did have a YouTube and Instagram channel, which often featured Ruby and Jodi giving life advice. It also had a Facebook group called Connections Moms of Truth, where some of the ideals espoused by Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt were considered a bit shocking, which is where homophobia, transphobia, racism and ableism come into it. Many videos of that have started doing their rounds on TikTok.
LGBTQ. And I think there's an I now. Plus. Okay, it's another of these movements that are going on in our world that is divisive.
Well, it is. I mean, they're putting meaning on the words, and it's constantly changing, so it's putting people on edge. Like, did I say that right? Did I miss a letter?
That's right. Did I miss something? Do I not know? Oh, you don't know what that means? I mean, how many times? I mean, I work with people every day, and not every day, but probably once a week, somebody says a word like cisgender was the last word I learned. I'm like, what in the heck is that? It's just some made-up word that someone placed meaning on.
Oh, the temptation to be pedantic. There's another video which I noticed in the comments many people said was projection because Jodi wants Ruby, loosely connected to this.
Are being exploited. They've been being exploited for the last 5 years very deliberately, intentionally, when the whole homosexual movement started. Once you cross those bounds with, man and a woman marriage, and now men and men can marry and women, when that law was passed, it opened the floodgate for every other devious, vile, sexually permissive and destructive behaviors to be engaged upon. And people will say, well, homosexuality is not the same as pedophilia. Okay, it may not be the same thing, but what is the same thing is sexual deviancy.
Earlier this year, Shari Frank, the daughter of Kevin and Ruby, did an interview on the Into the Light podcast. She discussed her parents and why she no longer speaks to her mother. According to Shari, she began questioning the group's extreme beliefs when she went away to college. Quote, "Some things within my family were happening that I started to question, like, I don't know if this is okay. I didn't know where to draw the line between life coaching and the gospel." She went on to say that she decided the connections coaching was too extreme. Quote, "It got to the point where I was like, I can't keep pretending like everything is fine."
I love principles more than my child. Yikes! That's a really, and that is the truth.
That is the truth.
Well, that certainly does answer a few questions concerning conditional love for children, where she has in fact prioritized something over something else. Her principles over those she's brought into the world, that no doubt she would want to adhere to her principles when her principles are entirely contradictory, running counter to her children, compromising on the parenting because principles. If you don't have kids, I genuinely think that principles are something you might want to hold firm to. Once you get into a relationship and you start to think about and maybe even consider having children, you two, the partners, male, female, 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 male, male, whatever, you work out what is best for you. In this instance, I firmly believe, and many I'm sure support this, Ruby's principles changed once she linked up with connections, which seems a bit strange, but it is also hardly a surprise when clearly somebody has invested time into a cult and desperately wants to appease their respective senpai. On August the 30th, 2023, Ruby Frank, the mother behind the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, was arrested under suspicion of 2 counts of aggravated child abuse. Jodi Hildebrandt was also arrested on similar charges. In Utah, if a perpetrator is found to have intentionally inflicted aggravated child abuse, which includes starvation, broken bones, head injuries, and suffocation, you face up to 15 years in prison. This is important because what led to the arrest was that one of the children escaped from a house that's been identified as belonging to Jodi Hildebrandt. They ran to a neighbour to ask for food and water. According to the police documents obtained by Fox 13, the neighbour noticed duct tape around the child's ankles and wrists. A statement from local authorities said, "The calling party stated the juvenile appeared to be emaciated and malnourished with open wounds and duct tape around the extremities."
Control Medic 42 and your 42 on scene.
Copy 10-6.
Control 12-11, all B17, all back 17.
Yeah, by this where he said a 12-year-old male showed up with tape around his legs Thursday asking for help, said he was afraid asking for police.
Copy 17.
7 Alpha, 17 as well.
101 to back.
10-4, you can show me 17. 10-4, he gave the name of Russell Franke, unknown date of birth, or he did give us a date of birth, but I'm not showing any Russells and Stillman. I'll keep looking into that. The RP said he left through the porch of the neighbor's house. 10-4, break 12x11 and 17, just 10-14. The male does have duct tape around each ankle. He's not telling the RP why.
Yeah, Russell is the
And
12th
so that there's
okay.
Here is the paper in question. When the police arrived at the house, a second child described as being in a similar physical condition of malnourishment as the child who escaped was found and also taken to the hospital. Police also discovered evidence that Ruby Frank had filmed a YouTube video from the house a few days before the arrest and wrote in the statement to Fox 13 that the revelation adds to Ruby Frank being present in the home and having knowledge of the ABUSE, malnourishment and neglect. For years, Ruby has tried to vehemently deny any allegations of ABUSE and claim that she was teaching her kids that all their choices have consequences, but the consequences she would inflict upon her children are severe. Upon Ruby Frank's arrest, Shari, the eldest daughter, posted an Instagram story about her mother's arrest with the caption, "Finally." In another story she said, "Hi all, today has been a big day. Me and my family are so glad justice is being served. We've been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and so glad they finally decided to step up." She's also shared pleas for people to gather any questionable or concerning connections or 8-passenger videos to help build the case against her mother and Jodi Hildebrandt. Ruby Frank's own sisters took to Instagram to say, for the past 3 years we have been kept quiet on the subject of our sister for the sake of her children. Behind the public scene, we have done everything we could to try and make sure the kids were safe. They all run their own parenting vlogs on YouTube as well. Shari calls them amazing mentors and supportive women. At time of recording, both Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke are in police custody, and I certainly hope for the time being they stay there, because we've got to talk about a little bit more on this, because there's more information we need to go through. 2 days before their arrest, Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke had posted a video to their YouTube channel Connections, the mom support group, titled The Denigrating Victim. In that video, they discuss the concept of victimhood, which they link with dishonesty. Quote, "Victim is a place where I live, a place where I have pity for myself because I don't want to be responsible for me." That is what Ruby says. Continuing, "I want to control everything around me so I can be comfortable, but I refuse to take responsibility for me. I could be dishonest, and I think I'm getting away with it because nobody knows." These were said at different points and seem a little bit like foreshadowing. She also said it might be 5 years, 10 years. I might even take it to the grave with me, my dirty little secret. So it appears I don't have any outcomes and I get away with it. Hildebrandt asserted that being dishonest always has consequences. Quote, "Even though you may not sense them, even though you may not overtly experience them in the tangible world, you are having spiritual outcomes. Just like you're having an outcome of taking a step off of a tall building." Other information you need to know. Jodi Hildebrandt once lost her ability to practice her relevant therapies. Her license was revoked and she was put on probation for 18 months after she decided her Mormon faith was more important than those she was treating. She shared the therapy sessions of a patient to the Mormon Church. Because while we can all agree there is a certain level of discretion when it comes to therapy, confidentiality, she decided, the two clients, a couple, without any consent from those involved, she disclosed sensitive confidential information which included a medical diagnosis. So what you want to do is waste $75 on a bunch of sessions with someone who's going to take your private information and share it with the Mormon Church, in case you are doing anything that's wrong, but also what happens in church stays in church, right? One of Ruby's sisters spoke out, Bonnie that is, in a YouTube video titled My Statement on My Sister Ruby Franke. In the video description, Bonnie wrote, "It would feel very out of place for me to continue to post my regular content after the arrest of my sister. It feels like a weight has been lifted as we now know our nieces and nephews are safe." Initially, if you clicked on the video when it had early access, you instead got video unavailable a few hours later. It was unclear at that point if the video had been removed by Bonnie or by YouTube. On Friday the 1st of September, in a statement emailed to NBC News, YouTube confirmed it had terminated 2 accounts associated with Ruby Franke, although it did not specify the accounts by their names. Quote, "We can confirm that we have terminated 2 channels linked to Ruby Franke in accordance with our creator responsibility guidelines." They did this as a direct response to Ruby's arrest, saying the platform may terminate a channel if its owner is accused of a serious crime. They did not specify who took down Bonnie's video, and that video statement by Bonnie is not on her channel anymore, just to be clear. She began the video, because someone did get something on this, by saying she was filming the response on Thursday evening and that the week had been nothing that I could have anticipated. Quote, "For the last 3 years we have truly clung on to each other and offering support to one another, and I don't think any of us could have seen this coming. We all did as much as we could legally," adding, "You don't know what you don't know." Bonnie said that she was numb but only cared that her nieces and nephews were safe. Quote, "This is the only thing that matters to us. It is going to feel weird for me to move forward. I mean, do I just move forward?" Times like these is where it really tests your belief in God. And I know that timing is everything. And I know that they will be taken care of. I know the kids will be okay and that our family will be okay. That is, I think, a fairly sizable amount of information to digest from previous videos I have done as suitable setups, knowing that this was going to have to happen. A nail in the coffin this video is going to be. I have no reason to go back anyway, and there's no chance of Ruby Franke coming back to YouTube, or Connections continuing, or Jodi Hildebrandt for that matter. Can't forget that cretin, can we now? What I want to do now is go through additional fallout that happened next. Because if our intention is to be as thorough as possible, we want to ensure that all information that can be available is presented in this video. You may notice that the father isn't mentioned as much. We will talk more about him later because there's a lot of speculation with regards to his involvement. We cannot speculate. We can only operate under what is known. It is very important to insert that the extent of his involvement in many things is somewhat unknown. So perhaps we'll act in good faith, but apply a small modicum of skepticism just for the time being. Firstly, YouTuber Swoop had tweeted out that she was going to be appearing on Good Morning America to discuss the exploitative nature of family vlog channels, something which I fully agree with, because they are very harmful to children. I really don't like them. I have been very consistent on this for years. On the 6th of September 2023, on the YouTuber Headlines channel, titled Ruby Frank Panicking Over Paying Lawyers, brackets, Money Stolen. The most replayed part is the part I now want to show you, before we continue with timelines of events for both Ruby Frank and her co-conspirator.
Let's continue reading the Reddit thread. The cellmate overheard a conversation between Ruby and Kevin. They instructed their attorney to visit the residence and collect money hidden in the house. When the attorney arrived, the money was nowhere to be found, causing Ruby to panic about being unable to pay him. It's interesting the cellmate said same attorney. Does Kevin and Ruby have the same attorney, and is that normal? Maybe their attorney is giving them a better rate since he or she is representing both of them. But this makes me think Kevin and Ruby are on the same team. They're going to work together to do whatever they feel like they need to do.
On the face of it, if that is true, it is quite peculiar.
And I don't know what it is at this point because I need more information. You know, we're all just learning more and more about this case every day. And also, who took the money? Did the police search their house, find the cash, and take it? Cellmate was surprised by how emotionless Ruby was. She only teared up once and said that she missed her kids. Said that Ruby seemed more concerned with her own life than the lives of her children. Ruby was also very worried about Jodi and was trying desperately to catch glimpses of her. She spent a lot of time praying silently in her cell. Ruby told Kevin that it was ridiculous how no one would listen to her about blank needing to be kept away from other children.
Kevin Frank's attorney, Randy Kester, denied that the children's father had any role, saying that he was not living in the house where the alleged ABUSE had occurred. Quote, Mom had the kids for the summer and went out of the county with the kids, and if he had known of or thought there was any ABUSE going on, he would have been all over it. The alleged ABUSE happened in a house that was a couple hundred miles away from where Mr. Frank was. At this point, all the children were placed under the custody of the state of Utah. For the next part of this video, we're going to start going through court appearances. These are vitally important, and they set up all the relevant information and the charges. There are a few, and all carry hefty sentences. We alluded to one earlier, carrying a maximum sentence of 15 years. The charges that she and Jodi Hildebrandt face go beyond that. Charges which, if done consecutively, equate to the rest of one's natural born life. We here at the Halls of Injustice are not overly fond of concurrent sentences. If you don't know what a concurrent sentence is, when you have multiple charges, it's them being stacked together to run at the same time. Consecutive is you finish one, then start the next. On the 8th of September 2023, Ruby Frank appeared in court, along with Jodi Hildebrandt. Here is a picture of both of them in court. They both appeared virtually before a St. George judge. St. George is a place for those who don't know. Each charge that they face carries a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. This is the first court appearance they had, and the judge had ruled they will remain in custody without bail. The next hearing was scheduled for the 21st of September 2023. They are being held, or were at this point, in the Washington County, Utah jail. Ruby Frank was charged with 6 counts of aggravated child ABUSE. Almost a week after Ruby Frank was arrested and charged, police incident reports revealed that her daughter had actually previously called the police, alleging that her siblings had been left alone for several days. The police released incident reports to NBC News that covered times the police were called to the Frank home since 2019. One of them was September the 18th, 2022, from the oldest daughter, alleging that a neighbor informed her that her younger siblings had been alone for 5 days. When the police arrived to conduct a welfare check, the children were visible through the windows but would not answer the door. Several neighbours then informed the police that Ruby Frank left her children often alone for extended periods to visit Hildebrandt in St. George. This is a 238-mile gap between a mother and her children. 238 miles. No parent would want to be more than 1 mile away from their children if they loved them. Rather interestingly, when Ruby Frank's first hearing took place, thousands tried to watch this. Not long ago, Utah began using WebEx to conduct remote court hearings. The court still intended on letting people into the virtual room until well over half an hour after the hearing was scheduled to begin. The court had to ask people to mute, turn off their cameras while people were still being let in, but it didn't stop many comments, which was mostly telling others to mute their mics. On Twitter, the Utah court's account said there were over 1,000 people in the room and many more trying to get in. Her notoriety is quite something. The Law and Crime Network and YouTube channel had over 40,000 people watching the WebEx room, but the stream stopped before the hearing started when it was kicked off. A moderator had said that the site would try to get it back on, but the stream never resumed. And people who hadn't turned their mics off decided in this WebEx meeting to simply play the song WAP instead, which is not what I thought it was. I thought it was wireless access protocol. It was a very popular thing that was first introduced to mobile phones. It turns out I am wrong, although I do think a song about WAP in that context would be quite cool. Ruby Frank had also made a claim, an allegation that one of her 6 children had tried to make sexual advances towards one of their own siblings. It was reportedly disguised by a patting game, but no further details have been provided about that. Not long after this court appearance, an attorney for Ruby Frank filed a motion for an expedited detention hearing after her co-defendant, Jodi Hildebrandt, was hospitalized. Allegedly, she experienced a life-threatening medical issue while incarcerated. The same lawyer had also filed for a motion for the hearing on the 21st of September to be moved to after October the 5th, because the lawyer had a conflict with the date and will be out of town on a family vacation. I can imagine Ruby Frank was very happy to know that, well, she'd lose 2 weeks in prison because her lawyer's on holiday. Skipping now to October 17th, 2023. Kevin Franke and his 2 adult children arrive and left together with attorneys at Tuesday's pre-trial hearing in the family's child welfare case. The proceedings related to the 4 minor Franke children are closed to the public, and the court records are sealed per an order from the judge. This appearance was for a scheduling conference which Ruby attended remotely from Purgatory Correctional Facility in Hurricane. This time, Ruby, though, was transported from Washington County to Utah County to attend the hearing in person. The decision to close the welfare for the child court proceedings to the public came on September 18. This decision is supported by the attorney Randy Kester, Kevin's attorney that is, and oddly enough, when it comes to the children, I tend to agree with this. On the 14th of November 2023, Ruby Franke appeared in Santa Clara Justice Court, related to a speeding ticket she received days before her arrest for aggravated child ABUSC. She appeared via WebEx from Purgatory Correctional Facility, and only said during the entire hearing the word yes. For the traffic violation, she pled not guilty back in September. During the hearing, the city asked the judge to dismiss the speeding charge given the nature of the charges she's currently facing in district court. The judge agreed and dropped the speeding infraction against her. No court date at this point had been set for Ruby Franke or Jodi Hildebrandt's charges. Both still reside in Hurricane, Purgatory Correctional Facility. On YouTube, there is an 8 passengers case playlist. There is a video of interest within it that I would like to now talk about. Bodycam footage from the police shows the police storming the disgraced parenting blogger Ruby Franke's mansion. The police then eventually arrived at the home of Pam Bodger, who was an employee of Connections. In fact, she was listed above Ruby Franke in the About section. Another video in the playlist shows Kevin Franke after reporting a burglary and asking about pressing charges against his daughter. The items stolen were given back to Kevin. They were 3 tablets, 3 cell phones, 3 camera GoPros, a stack of written journals and 3 passports for Kevin, Ruby and Chad. According to the police, Kevin actually wanted his daughter charged with theft for taking some hard drives out of the house. The exchange is now on the screen. At the bottom, his lawyer, Kester, had said that Kevin didn't do either. He and Shari are working together on bygones and resuming a loving and healthy father-daughter relationship. This is interesting, by the way, because it also points out that the relationship between Kevin and his children is not a good relationship. Ruby Franke's sisters had, because they received a considerable amount of criticism from their viewers and others who wished them ill because of their sister Ruby, both put out videos addressing the allegations and their interactions, their responsibilities. I'm going to play that now before we then go and do a little catch up, because the trial is after this.
I don't agree with how extreme they are on everything. I knew they were weird. I knew that they were off. Those are the things that we kept quiet about, because what was I going to say? What was I going to do? I was not going to come out and publicly say that I don't like my sister and I don't like what she's doing and I think she's weird. That is what we kept quiet about.
The problem Bonnie has is, and it's pointed out quite heavily in the comments, is that you weren't doing this behind closed doors either. You clearly were not doing anything to help the children, who were well and truly helpless.
It wasn't until about a year ago when we were able to reconnect with Sherry. Again, we kept that quiet. We never came out and said anything. You guys saw us together, and those were little glimpses when Sherry was ready to allow us to show those glimpses with her permission. And it was then that we were learning slowly bits and pieces of more. And that's where the part of behind the scenes, we did everything that we could.
Some do believe you in your comments when you say you did everything you could once you were illuminated, but as I've earlier stated, a vast number do not believe you. The last part of that video is also a very much highlighted part, is when she throws Kevin under the bus. Just to be clear here, throwing him under the bus does not mean I believe him to be innocent. Just, it's the comments she makes and how it can be interpreted by some.
Every news outlet, every national news outlet, people coming out of the woodworks making claims that are just so beyond ridiculous that there is no comment. It is so stupid that there is no comment. 3 years ago, Ruby and Kevin cut our family off, and eventually they cut Kevin's family off as well. And I thought that was going to end my mom. And I'll only speak for myself, but Ruby and Kevin are not where my concern lies anymore. So it is difficult to have the blame put on us when these are not the actions of us. These are not the actions that we did. And I get people wanting to put blame somewhere. I do. They want to blame someone. There's only one person that could have helped, and he didn't. What he was doing all that time when him and Ruby were separated is beyond me. I will not let Ruby and Kevin and Connections and Jodi take one more thing away from me.
Ruby Franke's other sister, Julie Deru, on her YouTube channel, put out a video on the 14th of September 2023 titled My Side of the Story Concerning My Sister Ruby Franke. It's 5 minutes long, and she does apologise in a pinned comment where people might have thought that perhaps she was making this video all about herself. I'm going to play the most replayed part of that video.
I am speaking today about my sister Ruby Franke, who was arrested a few weeks ago for child abuse. We all saw it. We all felt weird about this Jodi lady. We weren't comfortable with it. We didn't like it. We didn't like the teachings Ruby was bringing to the family functions, and we were this close to telling her, if you come to our family events anymore, we do not want to hear what you were learning through Connections because we don't like it. Anyway, so 3 years ago, Ruby and I hung out bottling tomatoes, and then a few weeks later, crap hit the fan and she left the family.
So next on the agenda is a catch-up, as I had earlier stated. The catch-up will start from December the 26th, 2023, because this doesn't go to trial. Actually, it goes back to December 18th, where a plea deal agreement was struck.
Mr. Winward, we are scheduled for a waiver hearing. Is there going to be a waiver today?
There will, plus a plea agreement, Your Honor.
All right.
I'll ask the bailiff to hand you if it's been executed.
All right. Mr. Winward, you have discussed with Ms. Franke a preliminary hearing, what's involved in a preliminary hearing. She understands she has a right to a preliminary hearing on all of the charges in the case. She understands what the charges are, and she's prepared to waive a preliminary hearing in the case on all charges.
She is, and that is contained in this agreement on page 7 as well.
Very good.
Utah parenting influencer Ruby Franke signed a plea agreement on December the 18th detailing her version of how she, with her business partner Jodi Hildebrandt, ABUSED Franke's 2 youngest children in the summer of 2023. The tactics outlined in the document in some ways mirror the treatment a teen accused Hildebrandt of in 2010, while the teenager was living with Hildebrandt. Hildebrandt in that case was not charged with any connection with the allegations. Both Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke were initially charged each with 6 counts of aggravated child ABUSE.
All right, I've been handed a plea agreement, and it appears to be signed by Ms. Franke. Ms. Franke, did you sign this agreement?
Yes.
And you did that today? When did you sign it?
On the 18th.
Okay. You've read it carefully?
Every word.
Your signature represents to the court that you've read it carefully, that you understand what you've read, and that you agree to all of the terms. Is that all accurate?
Yes.
Under the plea agreement, 2 of the 6 counts were dismissed, which also stipulated that Ruby Franke would testify against Jodi Hildebrandt, and in return, Washington County prosecutors would remain neutral for future hearings before the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. In the agreement, Ruby Franke admitted she intentionally or knowingly helped inflict serious physical injuries on her 2 youngest children from May 22nd to August 30th, 2023. Her daughter was 9 years old when this began and her son 11. The document outlined escalating ABUSE against the 2 children, specifically towards Franke's son, including that Ruby forced her son's head underwater, cut off his oxygen by smothering him with her hands and kicking him while wearing boots.
You've had sufficient time to ask questions of your counsel, to go over any questions you have. You're ready to go forward.
Yes.
You don't need any more time.
I'm ready.
Ms. Franke, is anyone pressuring you to enter into this agreement?
No.
Anyone promising you anything I haven't been told about?
No.
Anything that's not in the written plea agreement?
No.
Are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs today?
No.
Is there anything today that could in any way interfere with your ability to understand the agreement, its consequences, anything?
No.
On December the 28th, 2023, Jodi Hildebrandt pled guilty to child ABUSE, pleading guilty to 4 out of 6 counts of second-degree felony aggravated child ABUSE. As part of an agreement, Jodi Hildebrandt stated that she intentionally or knowingly inflicted and allowed another adult to inflict serious physical injuries upon 2 children living in her residence. There is much in the way of question about how long they will serve in prison for what they are pleading guilty to. And this is quite important. For one charge, it is up to 15 years. The Utah Sentencing Commission has a mathematical system set up to determine the minimum amount of prison time convicts will serve for aggravated child ABUSE. In this case, neither Ruby Franke or Jodi Hildebrandt have a criminal history, so the minimum sentence would be 18 months. However, criminal defense attorney Jeremy Deuce said that only applies to the first prison term. According to the sentencing guidelines, they don't do 18 months, then 18 months, then 18 months, then 18 months to calculate the minimum. Where they're running for consecutively, the anticipation for the base that they're going to do is going to be 39.6 months, I think just shy of 40 months. So adding everything together, the minimum amount of time would be shy of just 3 years and 4 months. The maximum amount is 30 years. Now the reason why is actually because of a state rule that limits how long someone can spend in prison, apparently. I will insert an opinion. Again, I really like consecutive sentences, especially for more serious crimes. In the UK we do concurrent far too often, and I think it's an absolute joke. With all this vital information, we're now going to skip ahead to the 21st of February 2024, today in fact, because I was tweeted it on Twitter, because others tweeted it as well. We have a sentence for inmate numbers 191.1 and 191.2, Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. After admitting to kicking her son, holding his head underwater, covering his mouth and nose with hands, basically brutalizing her children, Ruby Franke received 4 separate prison sentences for 1 to 15 years, which run consecutively. The length will be decided by the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. Under Utah's law, you cannot serve more than 30 years regarding consecutive sentences. Jodi Hildebrandt received the exact same sentence as Ruby Franke, which means if you look at it from an outside perspective, they received up to 60 years. If you look at it from another perspective, they got 4 years. However, it is unlikely they will be released in 4 years because that 10-page plea agreement, which I'm going to link down below, is brutal. The admissions of what she did, I can't actually tell you in this video, but it will be linked. because it is fundamentally important that you have all the consequences, all the context, so you can better understand the consequences experienced by both Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. They started connections to help people. It was a scam, a front for them to hide behind, while they continued to do the absolutely despicable to those who are the most vulnerable. As part of the plea agreement, I should point out, there is no chance of an appeal in any of this. They have outright given up on that chance and choice in the plea agreement. So they are going to prison and they're staying there, potentially for a full 30 years. One would hope so, but that is now down to Utah. Of course, we can all be divided over whether the sentence is long enough. I don't think it is personally. I think it should be life without parole. No one gets away with harming children. Straight up, you do not get away with that. This concludes our discussions concerning Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. Unless they are released from prison in 4 years' time and I'm still here, I see no reason to revisit them. They are a case study of influencers using their influence and allowing their ego to consume them whilst neglecting those who they are supposed to care, who they are supposed to unconditionally love. The very thing that neither parent, for even an iota of a moment, actually does.